Talk Show.
Recorded live.
And this is Ted Hicks from Late Night Parent Radio. Excited once again to have another guest on our show tonight. We're going to have Ellen Thompson, who is, if you hear, I'm going to say the name again, Ellen Thompson. You hear the last name Thompson, yes, it's the wife of Danny Thompson, who's the host of NBA Full Court Press, which is on Happy Hour Network every Thursday, 9 p.m. to 11 p.m. Eastern Time. So we get to speak with his better half because something happened. Well, it was brought to my attention about homeschooling, and I had a whole bunch of questions on it because it seems like it's something within the nation that's becoming very popular. It is something it's been going on for quite a long time, but we're noticing more parents are going that route. Me for one, I'm a dad who sends his kids to private school because, hey, I want to get that, make that better way for my children, a smaller school, class environment. Those are the kind of things that kind of drive me with choosing that option. But I'll just toss it out. Ellen, welcome to the show and glad to have you on.
Hello, thanks for having me.
No problem.
We are a homeschool family. We've been homeschooling for about we're going into our third year this year.
Oh, okay. Well, that's excellent. That's excellent. Well, we could sit here and, I could do the initial research, which is, I could find out what is homeschooling, and I guess Wikipedia tells me homeschooling is the most flexible and diverse educational option available today. The variety of homeschooling styles reflect the diversity of people who choose this method. Some families organize their homeschool the same as traditional school, with the children studying the same subjects the same way as public school students. Some families use opposite approach and unschool their children, a far less structured approach where the children's schedule is determined by the interests and readiness. Most homeschoolers, however, use the eclectic approach that is partly structured and partly interest-based. This method allows parents to pick and choose the classes and materials that meet their child's needs. These may be college or co-op classes, pool teaching, charter schools, independent study programs, apprenticeships, volunteering, and a host of options. Homeschooling is as unique as you are. Okay, so I read that in one breath, and I'm going to ask you from a mom's perspective, what is homeschooling in your, in your words?
Well, I would say that is a really good gist of homeschooling. There are different styles of homeschooling. There is the unschooling where you just basically let your child learn as they want. If your child is 8 years old and they're not reading, most unschooling parents are not worried about that. They figure when their child's ready to read, they'll read, and they'll probably read at like 10 or 11. Then you have the very strict parents who are very traditional. They're traditional homeschoolers, basically bringing the school into the home. You have a Charlotte Mason style. You have a classical style that teaches the children to learn in different stages of their lives. It follows their age range, like the grammar stage is between 6 and 10. The dialectic stage is between ages 10 and 12, and then the rhetoric stage is between 13 and 18. So, that style, follows the child and kind of goes with the natural order of how children learn. You have unit studies, and then you have the eclectic homeschoolers, and I think that's kind of where I fall in. We are like eclectic homeschoolers. We kind of pull from all different styles as far as unit study. We're mainly classical because we are part of a classical community in our area. But the first thing about homeschooling, before we even go into that part, I think one must understand is the legal aspect of it. Is it legal? Like, you must understand your laws for your state. And here in Florida, where we're at, our laws are pretty flexible. Our state requires that the parent get their child tested, and that we keep a folder of our child portfolio for the next 2 years.
Okay.
But every state has different laws, and I know you're in New York, and in New York, your state laws are a little different. They may require the parent to have some type of certification. So you just kind of have to go with wherever you're at. And there's a website called HSLDA, and they're a legal defense, and they have all the laws for every state on that website. So wherever you're at, you just go on that website, and they'll be able to tell you what your laws are.
That's excellent. That's excellent, because I was going to ask you, I mean, since it varies from state to state, the legalities behind this. So that's great. So tell me this much, like in regards with homeschooling, how much does it cost?
I would say that the cost varies depending on what you want to do. You can go with what they call box curriculum. And if you buy a box curriculum, that can be very expensive. It can run you almost $1,000 per child. Or you can, there's a lot of free resources out there that you can do. But for us, we pull from many different resources. So we don't use a box curriculum. One, because it usually doesn't fit our style, because, our history lesson is completely different from our math lesson. I'm not trying to reinvent the wheel with math, so I just use a regular math lesson. But I don't need the history that comes in that box curriculum. So I can pull my history from, many different resources like the library, and everything in the mostly everything in the library is free. You can use videos. So when you ask about pricing, I could say the price varies depending on your style. For one, we budget for our homeschooling curriculum, and I don't feel like we're going too far out our way to buy our curriculum for our child that we have. And with that also, with our extracurricular activities, a lot of these places and organizations understand that most homeschooling families have multiple children, so they make the prices very reasonable for homeschooling families to come and, have a day at their, organization like the Science Center. So the prices vary. I wouldn't say that it's anything that's unreasonable that a family couldn't afford to do. You just got to be conscious, and you may have to budget a little bit better.
Is it safer to homeschool?
Because safer.
Right, because nowadays we hear about so much violence that's going on in our schools, and how it's it's spilling out into the streets. So would you consider it a safer model?
I mean, I guess I could say yes, it's safer in a sense. I mean, you can't always protect your child at every, at all times of the day. But as far as with, sending your child to school and not having to worry about if you're bullying, with homeschooling, you can kind of, the parents, the children. And most times with, if there is a child that's kind of out of control in your group that you're in, the parent is usually right there. And if the child is bullying or they're being mean, the parent, usually they're right there to correct that child. So, I mean, in the sense of, I guess I can say it's safer for your children because they're always with you. And you do know who their friends are, and you know who their parents are. And most times their parents are there to correct any type of behavior issues that their child may be exuding at the time, and relatively quickly. Whereas, in the schools, you have the teachers, one teacher with, between 18 and 30 children in one classroom trying to, figure out and catch all the issues going on in his or her classroom at the time. But again, is it? Yes, I would say it's safer, but you can't always protect your kids at all times, from everything. So.
Gotcha. So tell me, give me just, I guess, real quickly, 2 quick advantages of homeschooling. Like if you needed to, and I don't want to use the word sell, but if you needed to present this to someone, let's just say your husband had no idea of homeschooling, and you had to present this idea to him. If you had only, 3 examples of the advantages of homeschooling.
I would say the first and foremost is that it's very personalized. You can personalize whatever your child loves, and children, they love a lot of different things at different times, and you can focus your homeschooling on that. For example, my son is into wrestling very heavily. So what we've been able to do, we bought him an encyclopedia. He wasn't really into reading. However, since he's into wrestling, we were able to buy him wrestling books. We were able to even almost kind of create like a unit study with wrestlers and study we were able to study geography. We were able to study when we study the different athletes, we can see, where they're at, where they're from. Like, for example, Seamus. Seamus is from Ireland, so we go to the globe. We look up Ireland. We study Ireland. We study the people there. We study the food there. We study the culture. That's how in-depth you can go with that. So it's very personalized. So you get him reading. You get him doing math because you have to do, like, height and weight. You have to do, like, if one wrestler is one size, you have, let's say, Big E, and he's going against another wrestler who's way smaller than him, does the size match up? So different things you can do with that. So it's very personalized. That's just on one aspect. That's what we've been able to do, and it really has been able to bring his learning alive. And he absolutely loves it and doesn't even realize that he's learning a lot of other things just by learning what he actually loves to do. So you can personalize it to that extreme. Another thing I would say is that you really get to learn and bond with your child. I think, for one, that's very important. What I've noticed with homeschooling is that with my friends who have older children, I wouldn't say like teenagers. I find that the teenagers, they still like being around their parents, but I think that stems from being with them and being able to have a conversation with them. So when they get into the older years, they're teenagers, like the 13, the 14, the 15-year-olds, they still like being around their parents. They're not that embarrassed with them. They have conversations with them. It's not just a conversation of, what's to eat, Mom, what's for dinner. It's, they actually love and enjoy being around their parents. And I think that's very powerful because you want your children to be able to come to you and to, when they're having problems especially during that time of the year, those age ranges, and to ask you questions and to get the advice from you as the, person who can help guide them in the right way. So for me, that's a really big advantage because I find that kids in public school, they tend to gear towards their friends and they tend to, ask their friends questions. Hey, what can I do with this? And it's like, that's great, but your friends really don't have life experience like we have as parents. So that's another advantage. You said 3, so let's go with a third one. My third one would be we have fun.
Gotcha.
Besides, being, homeschooling and doing all this schoolwork, we can have fun. And some days we probably don't feel like doing much, and that's okay. And I find that, when we just kind of learn to relax, that your children appreciate it more. We just came from a homeschool conference this week, and one thing that I got from it was, what do you want your children to remember? Because just like how you have a childhood, your children's going to have a childhood. And what do you want them to remember hearing? As far as, what do you want them to remember hearing? What do you want them to remember smelling, seeing, tasting? And with homeschooling, you can have a big impact on that. You can make it a really great childhood for them or not. If your child wants to go fishing again for the 3rd time this week, as a homeschooler, you can do that because you don't have to homeschool Monday through Friday, 8 to 4. You can homeschool at night. You can homeschool on the weekends because you spent some days during the week going fishing. But you're also building memories with your children that will last them a lifetime. So,
wow. So tell me this much. How are homeschool students doing socially?
I would say homeschool students are very social because they socialize with many different age ranges. They're not only with kids that are their ages, like my son is 8. He doesn't only associate with 8 and 9-year-olds. He associates with younger children, so like 3-year-olds, 4-year-olds, even as young as his sister who's 1, and he's able to see how children are, and that teaches him patience and with the younger children. And he also associates with older kids, because not all homeschooling families, I don't only go with homeschooling families that have kids my age. They have older kids, teenagers, and so he's able to look up to them. And, because in reality, in the real world, when we go to work, we're not only working with people who are our age. We're working with people who are much younger than we are and who are older than we are. So that, I think, is reality. And I think there's so many opportunities. These companies have noticed that the homeschool movement has become very big and very popular, and they have made, homeschooling days, like science centers, history, music, like museums. They all have homeschooling days where you can go once a month, and they put together a whole program for you, for your children to go, and they can learn something there. There's been times my son has told me, Mommy, can we just stay home today? Because, there's just so much to do. You can almost over-socialize because, everyone gets caught up on this whole socialization. I got to socialize with kids. I got to have my kids playing with other kids. But there's just so much to do that as a parent, you just kind of have to step back. And when my son told me that, I was like, I guess we're doing too much. Maybe I should stay home today. So they are not unsocialized. They socialize with adults. They socialize with children, and I think that is really reality. You're not only socializing with people who are your age range, like how they keep them in public school. You're socializing with everybody in the real world when you go to work. When you're in different groups, you're working with people who are straight out of college, who are 18 years old, and you're also working, with people who've been in your field for maybe 15 years, who are probably 30, 40, 50 years old. So there's no lack of socialization in the homeschooling community.
Will my child be able to get into college if they're homeschooled?
Absolutely. I think initially that was my concern. I felt like, maybe I'll just homeschool, throughout the elementary years. But as I continued this process, I met so many parents and students who have graduated from their parents' homeschooling then. And I thought that's absolutely beautiful. I mean, it's just a matter of keeping their transcript, which you're already doing because it's required by your state. You're keeping their transcript. You're looking at the different universities that you want your child to go to, and you can really build your high school transcript based exactly off what they want. Like if they want a specific science class, you can say, hey, we're going to take this specific science class. And if you as a parent can't do it, there's so many other parents who are part of your co-op or you can find that can teach that program for you. Like, for example, I know a co-op group where the parents are helping with teaching the program, and certain parents who are like engineers or who are nurses will come in and host different classes for their co-op. So as far as college goes, it's just a matter of making sure their transcripts are what the colleges are looking for. And universities now are really looking at homeschoolers and accepting them into their schools because they know that homeschooling students are, they do have a lot of time to do their work themselves. And I think when you go in college, you don't have your teacher constantly on you, reminding you, hey, you need to make sure you get this done. And they know that homeschoolers, they usually are self-motivated, and they will get the work done, and they go to class, and they get that grade, and they keep moving. They're not having to repeat so many classes. Then there are many different articles that I've read where homeschoolers are excelling in college when they get there because they've been doing so well in the years.
Hey, can I homeschool if I'm overseas?
Overseas, I would say I don't know, because you would have to look into what the laws are in that country. I will say that I did consider going to school in the Philippines, and what I learned about the Philippines is that there are no homeschoolers in the Philippines. Everyone in the Philippines is in a private school, and that's just kind of how they do it there. They have public school and private school. You pay for your children to go to private school, and, they usually give them a great education there, and that's it. They don't know anything about this homeschooling stuff. So it would have to be based on your country. So I personally, I don't know. But I just know about here in America and the United States, how we do it here. So I can't really answer that question.
I guess one of my final questions is, and it's already been answered in this this entire conversation is, do you recommend homeschooling?
If this is something that you want to do, absolutely. Homeschooling is not for the faint of heart. And if this is not your calling, then that's okay. I don't try to shame people or make them feel bad because they're not homeschooling, because this isn't for everybody. And that's okay. And if private school works for your family, if public school works for your family, by all means, put your child there. There are some great public schools and private schools out there. Homeschooling is not the only way. It works for us. I absolutely love it. Would I recommend it? Yes, but I would only recommend it if that's something that you want to do. Because if it's not, it can be the complete opposite. You can absolutely hate it, and your child can hate it. And you don't want your children, again, I go back to their memory, you don't want them hating this learning process or hating this homeschooling process, because they're not going to want to homeschool their kid. You don't want your kids saying, I'll never homeschool my child because mom was such a dictator when it came to, the education part of it. So it varies from family to family as far as, wanting what works for your family. So, but if it's something that you want to do, absolutely, go ahead and do it. But also, just remember, you must do what works for your family. And if you can't do it, that's okay. You're not a bad parent for not homeschooling your kid. It doesn't mean you love them any less. It's just it doesn't work for you, and that's fine.
Ellen, I can't thank you enough for joining us this evening to discuss this topic. I mean, and you were so thorough. And I got to definitely tell you, we definitely want you to come back, and let's just say in a couple of months or so, to give us an update on how, how homeschooling is going with you and your family. And just, if you ever need anything from us at Late Night Parents, don't hesitate to give us a call. If someone is interested or wanted additional information on homeschooling, what should they do?
Additional information on homeschooling,
Mm-hmm.
I would say they should contact or find out their local state laws. At the HSLDS website,
Okay.
They have all the state laws there. But as far as individual questions, how does it work? I guess they can contact me. I can, I'm not a guru at it, but I have been doing it for 3 years, and I absolutely love it. And if this is something that you want to do, I guess they can shoot me an email, and ask the question. I'll respond back.
All right. Well, Ellen, once again, thanks so much. Appreciate you. Thank you for taking the time out to discuss homeschooling and, I guess, demystifying the myths behind homeschooling. I guess we'll call this segment. So thanks again.
Absolutely.
Really appreciate all your knowledge and your help, and we look forward to speaking with you again in the future. Thanks so much.